But the thing about Argentina was they were developing motors and aircraft predominantly. In fact, an aircraft that was captured, that was crashed, that was recovered by a U.S. team was brought back to the U.S., smuggled back, and reconstructed, and then was demonstrated, according to a number of reports, as a lighter than air aircraft for President Lincoln while he was alive, and his cabinet came out and observed it. And they were unable to think of how they could use this. It was interesting, but they couldn't quite figure out how to use this or apply it. Now, across the southern part of the U.S. in the later into the 1800s, there's numerous reports of air vehicles which we would understand today to be Zeppelin type vehicles. Were reported and floating across the skies, moving across the skies, across the southern United States, Texas, other places. And those also were apparently being tracked and had origins in Argentina. And of course, when Germany showed up and there was this race between the Western powers to develop these blimps, it was amazing how far ahead of everybody else Germany was early on. Well, it was because they were getting a lot of their technology, including the engine technology specifically, from their breakaway operation that was out of sight, out of mind. And part of the interesting thing there is also that, when Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the whole story that we all know from the movie, the rest of the backstory on that is that Butch never actually killed anybody. And he did the train robberies. He was out there in the area that was the Utah territory at the time. But some of the other hole-in-the-wall guys were a bit more wild and had apparently become quite a nuisance, killed a couple of people. And the assertion is that some kind of a deal was made with the governor of the territory to let the hole-in-the-wall gang get caught, and that Butch would allow and assist on that. And the agreement was made with Sundance's help. Well, it turns out Sundance was a Canadian Mountie and was embedded with that operation with Butch. When they allowed the rest of the hole-in-the-wall gang to get apprehended on a train robbery, then they had to go hightail it somewhere. And they went to Argentina. And in Argentina, what were they doing? Well, they were surveilling this breakaway operation, picking up where others had to leave off. They bought a ranch that technically wasn't that far from this German operation, but wasn't right down their throat. It was like 50 miles away, and worked from there. And when you see the movie with the gal in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, in real life, that woman was not romantically involved with either of the men. She was, they had a Sisters of Charity type thing in that era where women who swore to remain virgins would then assist the women who were involved in prostitution to, get them through that period and all that. And it was a very, they played a very important role societally. And so that woman that you see in the movie, she was actually also working as intelligence for the U.S.
Wow.
and reporting for that, doing an intelligence operation specifically against the German intelligence. There was reasons why she had favorability into that. When they left Argentina, they didn't die in the gunfight the way that you saw. Uh, Came back to the States, Butch and Sundance. They were in contact with her in the San Francisco area. Sundance went back to Canada. Butch remained in the area and then was continuing to do intelligence work. And she had tried to infiltrate a division of this industrial operation, and apparently was killed. And so Butch came down. The autopsy showed her as a virgin, which they thought was unusual given her age. And but she was doing that work. And of course, when you think about it, if you have somebody that has access into the prostitute community, they have access into a lot of these nefarious communities and would have intelligence. And so this is a perfect cover, if you will, for other things that she would have been doing if she was an intelligence officer, and which is what the indication is. And so after that point, Butch himself then kind of disappeared into the woodwork because they were apparently blown on their cover looking at the German operations. And this is, a decade before we broke into World.War I. And so this has been going on for a very long time. And that operation in Argentina didn't stop there. What they were doing with the lighter than air vehicles was transiting, going down to Antarctica. And they were able to transit very quickly, hit lots of different areas, and do a lot of the build out there that is virtually unknown in the West. And that has been going on for quite some time. And of course, when you're under the ice, you don't get a bad day, you don't get bad weather, you don't get a storm. You have geothermal, so you have, even back before we had other, systems, you had the ability to, generate power, lights, everything else. And if you're in, the underground hot springs areas, the lakes, you're 62 to 68 degrees every day, never a bad hair day, 2 miles under the ice, nobody's touching you. So there's a longer story there. But we are dealing with a breakaway on the technology. These people are very advanced. And imagine, if they're gaining, a year on us every 10 years. And you start adding it up, and they're not getting blown to pieces with the latest war. You got some real problems. Obama, his last foreign trip was hitting a bunch of South American countries, ending up in Bariloche, and then he and Michael go off horseback riding and disappear for a day and a half, and nobody sees them up close and all that. Well, where did they go? Well, the reports were that they went down to Antarctica, spent better part of a day, and came back. So it's a short trip from that area. So, and that was the summertime. So there's a lot of mystery in there. And then when you have scientists who are disappearing, by the way, even at 1947 with Roswell and stuff like that, there's been some great work looking at the materials. And of course, Art Bell was a friend, and he had some stuff that was purportedly from Roswell. It was not stuff that was commonly built, but it was within the technology that we're able to do now, and even within the last several years. So some of the combinations looked, otherworldly. The reality is they may just have been a decade or two or five ahead of us. They weren't thousands of years ahead of us, and very indicative of a breakaway. And that area was very close to where we had a lot of the German scientists holed up there in New Mexico also. So there's all sorts of bizarre things. And just one last thing I'll add. For example, we had a vehicle that showed up, parked over a missile area, with silos during the Cold War. And then these missiles suddenly started turning on and going to launch mode all by themselves without any operator interaction. So it was widely portrayed as being, space aliens showing us that, if we don't stop, our weapons and whatever, they can stop them on command. The reality is, think of what we have today with back doors and programs and the technology to remote control things. If you've got somebody on the inside that's providing you access to put certain Trojans in place, all through a system, you could easily envision something where this isn't outer space technology. It's not from a gazillion years ago. It's just that you have somebody that's very advanced, working over your shoulder and able to undermine your systems and test whether they had that capability or not. And so it takes a little bit of the mystery out of it. Even when you look at this war that we're in with the breakaway, Trump even saying that he's going to release some of the UFO information can also be interpreted that he's actually releasing information that will help those that actually know what they're looking at to understand you're not dealing with aliens from 50,000 light years away. You're dealing with something that's very homegrown next door and a serious problem.